For antiwar.com and Chaos Radio 95.9 in Austin, Texas, I'm Scott Horton. This is Anti-Guantanamo Radio.
We used to kick routines and the presence was fitting. It was I, the abstract.
All right, y'all, we're going to start off the show today with our first guest. It's Brandon Neely. He's a former military policeman in the U.S. Army, a guard at Guantanamo Bay. He's in the Army from 2000 to 2005 and was in the news this last week because he took a trip to England to meet two of his former captives at the prison down there that he was guarding. Welcome to the show, Brandon. How are you doing?
Great. How about yourself? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing great, and thanks very much for joining us. I should also mention you're a member of Iraq Veterans Against the War as well. That's ivaw.org. So I guess tell us about when you first went to Guantanamo Bay, how it was, I guess, if you want to tell us how it was that you decided to be an MP and your path to Guantanamo Bay.
Well, I joined the Army in August of 2000. I joined a year before 9/11 even happened. So when I initially joined the Army, I didn't think much was going to go on. Just join and get some education and some kind of skill set and go on with life after 5 years of service. 9/11 happened in January of 2002. On a Friday night, I volunteered for a Iraq deployment, which I found out later on that night, Sunday morning, that I would be leaving to Guantanamo Bay. So we get to Guantanamo Bay about 72 hours before the first detainees arrive on January 11th, 2002. From the time we hit the ground, we were told that the people that would be held at Guantanamo Bay they would be detainees. These are guys, these are the worst of the worst. These people were caught fighting American people on the battlefield. These are the people that planned or helped plan 9/11 or would, kill us in a heartbeat. I stayed at Camp X-Ray for 6 months. I was there at Guantanamo. During my time there, after 9/11 and when I got to Guantanamo, I was just as angry and upset as everybody else. And I really thought at the time that we needed to do something, seek revenge and kind of like an eye for eye. And during my time at Guantanamo, my views kind of changed on the whole issue. Not that I didn't think that terrorists should be held in some way or not. I just didn't agree with a lot of the treatment that was going on.
I wonder, how long were you there before you realized that maybe not all these guys would cut my head off if they could in a second, kind of thing, like they had told you?
Probably maybe a couple months or so. When I started speaking to some of the detainees that did speak English, like one of the detainees I did go meet, Ruhal. I mean, I was a year older than he was, and here we were talking about music and things that I did back home when I was here in the States. You go in the club talking to girls. But it just, a lot of the detainees were telling the same story that, I was bought. The Americans bought me for $1,500, $3,500 a head, and they were sold to the Americans by the North Alliance or whoever. And that's when I started thinking about it. But even the stuff that was going on in the camp, every day when you went to go work at the camp, you were constantly getting drilled in your head that these people would kill you in a heartbeat. So as soon as a lot of people maybe start having doubts, every day you're getting that put in your head, you're gonna, start thinking one way, you're gonna snap right back to the other way.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious if your officers are teaching you guys that these are all the worst of the worst and all that. What are the instructions, the specific training that they gave you on how to imprison them? I mean, if you're an MP, that doesn't mean that you're trained as a prison guard, right? So they must have given y'all instructions about how you were to treat these worst of the worst people.
Training-wise, no. We were probably there a day and a half, 2 days before the first detainees arrived. We went over quick training as far as handcuffing procedures, but being military policemen, we were all pretty efficient in that anyways. Other than that, we weren't given no kind of specialized training, other than we were given instructions on the IRF team, their Internal Reaction Force team, just like the one man would carry the shield and take control of the head, two man would go to the right hand, and so on. And just go back a little ways. From the time we were there, from the day we stepped foot in Guantanamo, we were told at no time did the Geneva Convention would not be in effect because these guys were not enemy prisoners of war, that they were detainees. And we were told from day one that a facility like this had never been ran, and there was no standing operating procedure at the time. That was just play it by ear. If it didn't work on one day, we just go a different way the next day.
Mm-hmm. Well, now, most of the coverage of torture, whether at Guantanamo or whether in Afghanistan or whichever ghost prisons around, have focused on actual interrogation. But, there was also the Abu Ghraib scandal where the people who took the rap anyway, the people in the pictures, they weren't interrogators, they were the guards. And they had been instructed, they say, and I think credibly in enough different times from different ones of them, that they had been instructed to soften these people up so that when the actual interrogators got there, that they would have less trouble cracking them. Were you guys under instruction, either explicitly or implicitly, to keep these guys on edge and make their lives absolute hell, or were you basically there protecting them in the sense that a sheriff is in charge of the people in his holding tank?
I would say we weren't directly told to, I guess you would say, soften them up. We were told to keep the pressure on them as far as, first at the beginning of the camp, they weren't allowed to talk, they weren't allowed to move around, they weren't allowed to pray, they weren't allowed to do any of that stuff. And now that I go back and look at it, just like when I worked nights for a little bit when I was there, like none of the detainees could have anything covered up as far as hands or anything. So you're constantly walking around and just pretty much just waking everybody up every 5 or 10 minutes, telling them to uncover their whole body. So, which we were told to do that, which pretty much was depriving the whole camp of sleep for all those months. So I guess, without even knowing it, we were softening them up for interrogation or whatnot. But we were never directly told. We were just told to keep the pressure on them and strictly enforce the rules or whatever we were told to. But that was it.
Now, did you ever witness any interrogations there?
No, I never was part of any interrogations. The only thing I speak about and the only thing I saw was what I saw on the everyday blocks or what I took part in.
Mm-hmm. Well, and, I think that's really important just to make that contrast. That here's a guy, you're a military policeman, a guard, never involved, I guess not even standing outside the door while someone was being interrogated. Is that what you're saying?
No, not at all. At Camp X-Ray, they actually brought another MP military police company in from Fort Stewart, Georgia, and their primary mission was to come into Camp X-Ray and escort the detainees to the interrogation room. That was their primary mission. That's what they did the whole time.
Mm-hmm. And yet, all that being said, with you having nothing to do with any interrogations, in your interview with UC Davis and on Rachel Maddow's show and in other places, you've really described witnessing quite a lot of at least abuse, if not outright torture. Some of it, I think, would even clearly be torture, according to what you told UC Davis. So why don't you tell us about, I don't know, top 10 worst things you saw happen down at Guantanamo, and perhaps tell us about your involvement in some of these things as well.
Well, I'll just start with my involvement in the first situation. Many people have read the UC Davis project. Initially, when I started the conversation with UC Davis, I had left it out for different reasons. It's kind of embarrassed the whole situation, and it's just time I'm not proud of. But then I went back and told them about it. I think it's important for people to know because it was the very first incident that ever happened at Camp X-Ray. It was the first day the detainees came, and we take them off the bus. And we take him to an in-processing station. And the detainee was he was a lot older than other detainees. I would say probably he was in his late 40s, early 50s. And me and my escort partner grabbed him, and we could initially tell that he was very scared, shaking, didn't want to walk, just didn't want to listen to any instructions at all. So we were screaming at him, yelling at him to the block. And we took him to Alpha Block, and we put him on his knees. And at this time, the detainee still had his leg irons on, his hand shackles, and the blackout goggles, so they couldn't see nothing in his earmuffs. So we put him on his hands and knees, and my escort partner takes his leg shackles off, throws him outside the cage. He goes in and takes his hand irons off, and when he did, the guy jerked to the left a couple times, and we're yelling at him, don't move, and the interrogators supposedly tell him, don't move, we're taking the handcuffs off. So my escort partner goes back in and takes the handcuffs off. Again, and when he did, once again, he jerked to the left, and I was on the left side of him. I had my hand, I was grabbing him by the left hand and I had my hand on the back of his shirt. And when he jerked to the left, I just slammed him face first to the ground and got on top of him and held him down until the Internal Reaction Force team came and pulled me off of him. And about a day or two later, I remember coming back on the block and on the Alpha Block and walking by him. Like the left side of his face was all scabbed up and bruised up, I guess, from hitting the pavement floor when I slammed him. But then talking to some of the detainees on the Alpha Block later on that spoke English, they told me the whole reason the guy even resisted was because put him on his knees and he couldn't see. He thought he was going to be executed because he had seen family members and friends and knew of, well, that's the way of execution in some countries. So he was just pretty much fighting for his life that he thought at the time.